evening. My name is Gatel Reed Nicholas. I will be your host for the GRN show. It's almost daily we hear about senseless gun violence and accidents. I was reading on USA Today between February 10th and the 17th, there were 10 mass shootings, resulting in more than 50 victims. Is there a solution to decrease these killings? Imagine in 3 days, 50 lives, 50 families were impacted. Well, there are grassroots organizations really advocating to ensure we have gun laws that is really impacting our community and ensuring that everybody is safe. So with us this evening, we have Beth Wiegard as well as Miguelaille Pierre from Mom Demands Action. They're both activists for gun sense laws. So ladies, good evening and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. I've been admiring the work that Mom Demand Action is doing because it's a very quiet grassroots organization, but very impactful. So Beth, perhaps you could tell us about Mom's Demand Action and its advocacy efforts to secure better gun laws. How long it's been in existence? Are there other chapters throughout, the United States? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to. Moms Demand Action is the largest grassroots gun violence prevention organization in the US. It was founded 10 years ago after the shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary. We fight for public safety measures that we know can protect people from gun violence. We pass stronger gun laws, and we work to close the loopholes in the laws that jeopardize the safety of all of our families. We also work in our own communities and with business leaders to encourage a culture of responsible gun ownership. That's important to know, that we work with gun owners who are doing all the right stuff and make sure that we want to just make sure everybody does that. Across the country, we have chapters in every state and local groups in most cities across the country. We know that gun violence is preventable, and we're committed to doing what it takes to keep families safe. And we also work, in addition to working in our communities and on safe storage and handing out information and supporting and amplifying the voices of gun violence survivors, we also work on elections and legislation at the local, state, and federal level. So we work to elect what we call gun sense candidates. And once they are elected, we help them fight dangerous bills, and we help them pass gun safety legislation. And then we hold them accountable when they don't do that, which sometimes they don't. So we like to say we change the laws, or we're going to change the lawmakers.
So needed in our society these days. Now, obviously, you hear of gun violence, gangs in other countries such as Haiti and so forth. But, I keep reading that the United States has more guns than other countries. I'm not sure how certain that is. And if so, how is this issue impacting our communities?
Well, Miggy, if you don't mind, I'll start on this one. I just looked up the numbers actually today. The United States has 5% of the world's population, but we have 46% of the world's civilian-owned guns. Ooh. There are 120 guns for every 100 Americans. There are more guns than people in this country. No other country has more civilian guns than people. We rank #1 in firearms per capita, and we also have the highest homicide by firearm rate among the world's most developed nations. Our death rate from gun violence is about 18 times the average rate of other countries. And it's important to note, we also accounted for 44% of suicides by firearm around the world. A lot of people don't understand that the majority of gun deaths in this country are suicides. We are one of the only countries in the world where bearing arms is a constitutional right, but the other two, Guatemala and Mexico, have about 1/10 of the gun ownership that we have because it's not as politicized an issue there. There's more avenues to enact and enforce common sense regulation. And it's also worth noting that a lot of the gun violence in Latin America and the Caribbean is exacerbated by weapons. It's fueled by weapons that come from the United States. There were about 200,000 firearms from America that go across Mexico's border every year. And of course, a lot of those were trafficked from Florida. So our lax gun laws here not only affect our communities here, but they fuel some of the violence, which is making people try to escape the violence in their home countries and come into the US. So it's part of a much larger problem.
That's interesting that you should mention that because, often when we think of such a problem, we're thinking, well, it's affecting the US, but based on what you're saying, it really is impacting neighboring countries, from the Caribbean as well as Mexico.
Yep.
And how is that impacting our community?
It's the level of gun violence. You mentioned mass shootings. We know that mass shootings are a very small fraction of the overall gun violence that plagues some of our communities on a daily basis. And it's important to note that in other countries that don't have our level of gun ownership without common sense gun laws, that just leads to those higher increases in homicides and suicides and injuries as well, which all have a cost on the community, which the communities bear.
And Miguelaille, I think we rallied together in some of the events that Mom and Demand Action, and one of them, Fred Guntenberg, one of the parents who lost his daughter during the Parkland shooting. He says we must treat gun violence as a public health issue. What are your thoughts, or I should say, what are the thoughts of Mom Demands Action?
Well, the thought that Mom and Demand Action is actually demanding and what we are advocating for and will continue to advocate for is the safety for our community. And we believe that, it's not just in Florida, it's all over. Before someone is able to carry a gun in public, they should actually have a license. And they should also go into background or criminal background checks. And it's not that we are against someone to not to have that. It's again the safety of our community. I think everyone and everyone who has access to carry a gun should go under that background check. And a license, of course. So with people having to carry a gun without a license, and again, this is concerning to our community, of course. So we just like I said, we've been fighting for the community, and we will continue to fight just to make sure our communities are safe.
And it really resonated with me because very often, particularly when you have those mass shootings or suicide, there is a mental health issue going on. And when he said that, I said, so gun and mental health goes hand in hand. And this is where Miguel, the background check is important. Why do you think people are fighting so much not to have a background check?
Well, this is something in general. I think everybody might be into a lookout for that. Everyone, they have their own opinion. They can say, what they wish to say. However, we need to know that we have families that are, we don't want to go on a Thanksgiving Day without having just to have an empty chair at the table. We don't want that. But again, some people would prefer to have that. But again, moms in demand, just like I always said, we're here to fight. We're here to make sure we don't, the way we're losing people, we're not losing them as much as we are today. And certain people, I guess it is what it is.
I
It's
think
a
too,
shame. Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, Gitel, it's important, exactly as Miggy said, to realize that most people are in favor of background checks on all gun sales. If any polls shows that it's at least 65-70%, depending on how you do the polling. So it's not like this is most people are against it. Most people are in favor of it, but sometimes the people who are in charge of putting through the legislation have special interests that they're more interested in being responsive to those special interests, and especially the gun lobby, because there are people that make money every time that people feel insecure. They say, well, if you're not secure, you need a weapon. And then people buy more guns. And then that causes more insecurity, and then that causes more gun sales. So it's a cycle for them. So we need to break that cycle with some common sense and understand that the majority of people support these kind of common sense efforts.
And it's not just a matter of you feeling insecure and you're having a gun, but it's the use of it. Certain times we're using them where there is not really a need to be used. There are other alternative way we can have issues resolved without jeopardizing somebody else's life.
Right.
What really concerns me also is, you have little children who are around guns. Like a while back, maybe like a 4-year-old by mistake ended up killing a sibling because the gun was right there. So which tells me there is also the need for people who have guns to really understand that they have to store the gun a certain way to minimize the number of accidents that are occurring, especially where children are concerned. So, but before we go to our next question, we're going to take a short break and we will be right back.
Who could have imagined that just this moment,
imagine how many lives we'd save.
This moment where we felt such grief and such pain, would turn into a movement.
I need you to keep going. I need you to keep wearing your shirts. We will never give up.
Gun safety! When do we want it? Now!
For all the survivors of gun violence.
Moms demand action! Moms demand action!
Together, we've made history. And we're just getting started.
We are back. We have with us Beth Wiegard, as well as Miguelaille Pierre from Mom Demands Action. And we are talking about the risk that we all face. And things might even get better if we're not more vigilant about the types of bills that we will be looking at in Florida and perhaps in other parts of the nation. So, we really are at risk of having much linear laws regarding the possessions of weapons. Tell us, what are the risks if Florida should enact the permitless carry bill?
I'm so glad you asked that, Gatel, because a lot of people aren't even aware that that bill has been introduced, and it's actually been fast tracked through the legislature. So the upcoming legislative session starts on the 7th, but this bill has already been through several committees, and its next committee meeting is on March 9th. So it's coming right up. So what that would do is it would take away the current requirement that if you're going to carry a concealed weapon, you have to have a permit. So the bills they generally say that you need to meet the same requirements, but you don't have to actually go through the process. So now we're on the honor system. And of course, that nobody's going to find out what actually happened until somebody's carrying a loaded concealed weapon in public and something bad happens. So the important thing to remember about Florida currently requires a permit for to carry a concealed weapon. This is the only statute in Florida that requires firearm training, including live fire training, and a background check for any weapon that you want to conceal carry. Otherwise, there's a loophole in Florida that if you buy a firearm not through a licensed dealer, you don't have to have a background check if it's a private sale. So if people are going to carry a concealed weapon, this is the only background check some of those people will go through. So these laws would overturn that, and the Senate version of the bill specifically strips out the safety training. It's not even required. Interestingly, the Senate bill puts more funding into school staff being armed, but it requires a lot of training for them, but not everybody else. The bill also, there are some places in Florida, even with if these bills pass, there's some places where you still cannot carry a concealed weapon even if you have a permit. But these bills, both of them, decrease the penalty for carrying a concealed weapon on school grounds. It used to be a 3rd-degree felony, now it's a 2nd-degree misdemeanor. So, we know that these bills save lives because they keep untrained people and unvetted people from carrying loaded weapons in public. If you ask, the polling that's been done on these bills, 80% of people oppose them, including gun owners, but Democrats, Republicans, and gun owners oppose taking away the permitless carry, but people don't understand that that's what's being introduced. And the lawmakers that are pushing it are trying to say that it's an equal division of people supporting and opposing it, because they're having equal numbers of people come to Tallahassee and speak on behalf or against the bills. But we know because of the polling that the vast majority of people oppose it. It's going to make our communities less safe. It's going to make law enforcement's job much harder and more dangerous. Yes. And it's deeply unpopular. So we're just trying to educate people about the dangers of that.
Definitely.
That is, go ahead, Miguel.
Well, I was way into that. I was saying definitely, because having those laws that will not only make our communities more safer and, and also, just like Beth said, making the job of the police officers more easier, less dangerous, into the community.
So we're saying the permitless gun laws will make the job of the police officers easier?
No. I'm just saying to be against that. Yes.
Yeah, it'll make their jobs more dangerous. There are 25 laws that already overturn their permitting systems. So we have some data on those states now, and they've seen on average an increase of 32% in armed robberies, an increase of officer-involved shootings of about 13%, and a decline of 13% in the clearance rates of violent crime. So it makes crimes harder to solve. And there's also a huge increase in gun thefts. And we know that guns stolen from cars take those guns off the legal market and put our families and our communities more at risk, because now there's more untraced guns out there in people's hands.
Wow. Yes. I guess my question is, when you what is going through the mind of these legislators? Because obviously our law enforcement personnel will be much more at risk. Our communities will be in much danger. And I guess it's all economic. It's all about money making for those gun manufacturers, the NRA, and is that what's driving such legislation?
Yeah, we found that it's the legislators that are playing to that audience. Those are the people that are pushing through these kind of bills, and they don't want the details about the bills to be discussed robustly in the community. That's why they're fast tracking them, because when people find out what's in the bills, like decreasing the penalties for carrying a concealed weapon on a school campus, nobody likes that. So they're just trying to push it through, and they call it things like constitutional carry, and they call it things that are kind of a little bit
They
misleading.
give it different names.
Right. Because
Yeah.
they just want to slip it through. I looked up 3 of the lobbyists that are pushing this, that are registered working on the Senate bill. One of them is a guy who works for the NRA. And then there are other 2, they're all based in Washington. They're all lobbying groups, but they're not representative of responsible gun owners. They're beholden to the manufacturers who are they're producing so many more weapons, and at so many every year. There's more and more millions of guns sold than the year before.
And most of the time when I have that conversation with people, they said, I don't want anyone to infringe on my right to carry weapons. And so they talk about, I want to maintain the Second Amendment. Tell us, what is the Second Amendment? And do you think that stricter gun laws will infringe on people's right to bear arms and carry guns?
Well, we want to be really clear that Moms Demand Action supports the Second Amendment and responsible gun ownership. We all want to keep our families safe. I think that's stuff that we all agree on. But the Second Amendment does talk about a well-regulated militia, and the right to bear arms is not unlimited. The Congress and state legislatures have already enacted some legislation restricting what kinds of weapons you could buy. For example, you can't buy a machine gun. There's all these different things you have to do. And all of these laws have been found constitutional. There's a lot of challenges to them, which are often funded by industry groups, but a lot of them have been found to be constitutional. There have been laws passed at the federal and the state level. And they're just common sense efforts to try to keep people safe. But the conversation gets kind of hijacked by this very extreme language about, they're coming for your guns. And there's a lot of people in Moms Demand have guns, are responsible gun owners. That's not the issue. The issue is making, if you store your weapons securely and you keep it locked and you keep the ammunition separate and you keep it away from children and you keep it away from people who are in crisis, you're doing all the right stuff. We just think that everyone should be kind of held to a basic standard of safety and being responsible when you have a firearm.
Right.
Did you want to say something, Miguel?
No, I was seconding what Beth had just said, because if it's not a matter of you having it, it's a matter of how you handling it and how you use it.
Which makes sense. And to go back with the background check, people who seek to purchase gun and all, would they be responsible for the background check? How will the background check be handled? I don't know if it's a conversation that's taking place, and who will pay for the background check? Will it entail fingerprint? Will it entail just a local background check? I'm not sure how that works. It sounds great. Just, I don't know, maybe either one of you can give us an idea of along the lines of really ensuring our safety, what would a background check requirement look like?
I think there's a lot of
Well,
different levels, and Miggy, you could chime in here too. There are some federal, if you buy from if you purchase a firearm from a federally authorized dealer, you have to go through a certain kind of background check. If there's a state requirement, that's going to be at a different level. As I said, there's a state requirement in Florida if you buy from a licensed dealer, not if you buy it from an individual. So there's a lot of different details that go along with those, but those are the kind of things that legislators are supposed to work out in the legislative process, right? With input from constituents. It's like, well, I don't want a background check it's going to take me 2 weeks, and I don't want a background check that's going to cost $150. And then you figure out the details, but you need to be able to have the conversation about what the benefits of doing that are and how many lives could be saved.
And what are the benefits? That's exactly the question. What are the benefits and what are the disadvantages as well?
well, the benefits are definitely, which we've been saying, it's the safety of our community. That's the number one. And again, you want to make sure as an adult, if I have a gun into my house, I want to make sure if I have any children, the gun is stored safely where that child has no access to it. Someone who has some issues with mental health, we want to make sure we provide services, not only just that, we want to make sure they don't have access to those type of tools. So there are different benefits, again, which is attached to it. I will let Beth weigh into that and maybe say a little more about the benefits and the disadvantage of that.
Yeah, the benefits of, as Miggy said, we're just, when you keep guns out of the hands of people that could potentially do harm with them to themselves or others, right? Remember, the largest number of deaths from firearms in this country are suicides. So that's, people who are potentially, if you're a person who's living with a person who's abusive and there's a weapon in the house, that makes the situation just so much more dangerous. And it's important to realize in terms of the bad part of it, or the disadvantages of it, that it's really more a matter of inconvenience on one side versus the safety of our families and communities on the other. And the inconvenience is like, our current permitting system in Florida, there are over 2.6 million concealed carry permits in Florida in effect right now. They issue there's over 200,000 of them just in Broward County. It costs less than $100. This is not for a background check. This is for the concealed carry permit. It costs under $100. They issue, the Florida Department of Agriculture that issues them issues hundreds of thousands of them every year. It's not some burdensome bureaucratic process. It's a process that you go through, and then you get your license, and periodically you renew it. It's a thing. But the states where these things are in effect, you see the data afterwards that those states have better safety outcomes for their communities. Where Florida has 7,000 people killed and injured every year from gun violence. If you increase that by 13%, that's another 800, maybe 1,000 people killed and injured next year if these laws go through. Like that's the tangible good thing about these kind of permitting processes and background checks, criminal background checks. And without them, that's just more families that are, as Miggy said, are going to have an empty seat at the Thanksgiving table.
Wow, it's very complex. And something else that comes to mind, you have people carrying all types of guns. there is gun for your safety. And you also have some other types of gun that really should not be in the hands of people. Perhaps we can touch on that a little bit. How do they get these guns? And why do they feel they have to carry them?
There's a lot of factors involved with the way people relate to guns in our society. There's a part of our culture. It's very wrapped up in that. And the important other thing to remember is that there's a lot of marketing behind this. There have been some very successful court cases holding gun manufacturers and sellers responsible for the very irresponsible marketing that they've targeted at kids. So it's disturbing. It's very disturbing. There's this other thing that's going on now where you can get parts of a gun on the internet. They call them ghost guns, and you can assemble it in your garage, and they don't have any serial numbers, or there's no way to track them. And that's, if that weapon is now something that somebody's going to carry as a concealed weapon and something goes wrong, there's no way to track that weapon.
To track. As well as if they go into the street market and purchase, of course.
Right. Or getting a stolen weapon from I know that there were, in one year, I think it was 2021, there were 40 guns stolen from unlocked cars just in Coral Springs. And those are all on the market now. There's no requirement that you lock up a gun in your vehicle. You just have to have it somewhere in the vehicle. So yeah, and there's also the types of guns that you can buy on the internet that there aren't. They're different kinds, and I don't know if you're not trained to use them, then that can be also a danger to use. Some people get weapons for self-defense, and if they're not trained, there's actually a greater danger statistically that weapon's going to be turned on you if you're attacked, if you don't know how to control it and defend yourself.
And talk to our viewerships. Obviously, I think it's an issue a lot of us are frustrated about. We feel it continues to get worse, not better. What can each and every one of us do to ensure that we're on that same agenda, really, to secure our families and community?
We want to make sure that we educate the community. Again, as far as the safety of carrying a firearm. Beth, did you want me to weigh in the Be Smart?
No, we can only talk about Moms Demand stuff in this.
Okay, so the Moms Demand action is, we want to make sure the community is aware of the safety-ness of that. How do we need to advocate? More people need to be aware of. We need to talk to our elected officials and talk to them and raise our concerns.
Yeah, this is really critical right now, just as Maggie said, especially with the permitless carry bill. It's coming very quickly, and there hasn't been a lot of time for people to even understand that it's happening or to understand what it means. So shows like this are so important, Gatel. It's so wonderful that you're doing this, because people really need to understand what's going on and just pay attention to things like this when they sneak through. The next thing you know, something can really fundamentally change in your community. We're also trying to get people to reach out to their legislators. Unfortunately, in Broward County, most of our delegates to the state legislature understand how dangerous this bill are and are opposed to it. But the people who are on the committee that's going to hear it on March 9th are not. So those are the people that we need to reach out to. We need to reach out to the people on the committee and tell them how we feel. So we have a tool set up with Moms Demand that if you go on your phone and text the word Florida to the number 64433, So that's Florida to 64433. And you do that when you're ready to talk to legislators, like when you have a second. And then you type the word call. It'll take you right into a phone call with one of the people on that committee, and you can tell them that you think permitless carry is a dangerous bill. Even when you have a legislator in your district who's your representative, who's on the right side of these issues, you need to engage with them also and let them know that this is important to you. Maybe you're a business owner who has a store where people come in a lot, and people are going to be afraid to come in if they think more people are armed. Maybe you have a restaurant where people gather and you want people to continue to gather and feel safe. Maybe you're in the tourism industry and you're worried that people are going to not want to come to Florida because they're worried that their families won't be safe. Maybe you're a responsible gun owner. They really need to hear from gun owners. You can identify yourself and say, hey, I have a gun. I understand how to be a responsible gun owner, and this bill is not any of that. Those are the people that we need to engage with the lawmakers. It really moves them if they hear from a lot of people. We have a lot of experience where you tell your personal story, why it matters to you, and that really makes an impression with people. There's something else you can do, by the way, too. You can also write a letter to the editor of your local paper, or even a community paper, your HOA, or whatever your city. You can, if they accept submissions. And the other thing you can do is you can connect with us, with Moms Demand. We have a Facebook page where we're always posting actions you can take or ways to get involved. And you can go to the Moms Demand website also for more information. So our Facebook group, it's just look for Moms Demand Action Broward County, and the website is momsdemandaction.org. And there's a lot more information there about ways to get involved and learn what's going on.
Terrific. I'm hoping maybe that information, we can put it out there, because between now and the 9th, if we could get as many people involved, to either call or write or even encourage their local elected official to pass a resolution or something against that permitless carry, it would be great. So both of you, Beth and Miguelaille, thank you so much for your insight, for sharing this information. And I know you're going to Tallahassee. Good luck in Tallahassee, and let's just hope for victory, where this bill died before it is enacted.
Here's hoping.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Great. Well, keep up the good work. Have a good night.
Thanks so much. Tell you too.
Community Access Center ta yon fò sonje ke menanmen ak partner li yo, li kapap fil taksou depi income ou moins passé $66,000 ou kapap qualifié pour fil taksou gratis si chéri sans payer un good. Sorti journée jodi pour arriver 15 avril 2023, il y a plusieurs locations pour fil taksou gratis si chéri grâce à Borrowed Tax Pro Coalition. Dans Pat Lawkins Community Center qui est dans Pompano Beach, Florida, tous les mercredis et tous les vendredis, et puis tout dans Miramar Branch Library. Pour fil taxe gratis, c'est important pour réunir quelques documents pour rendez-vous, tant que identification légale, d'abord de tout forme, carte sécurité sociale, bank statement, copie taxe année passée. Pour fil taxe gratis, depuis income en bas $66,000, les Community Access Center dans 954 534 91 13 ou carré tout dans 954 357 81 80 ou bien 754 999 0309. Fil taxe gratis depuis income en bas $66,000. C'est un courtoisie Community Access Center, menamé ak Borrowed Tax Pro Coalition.
We are back and we're talking about being able to legislate common sense gun laws. And currently there are some issues in Florida with the legislators who are really looking at a permitless carry gun. So I'm hoping those of you listening try to be engaged, because definitely this is something that will impact our community. You know, when you think of mass shootings, it is described as an incident where there have been more than 4 victims. And, you know, there have been more mass shootings than days in 2023. We have not even had 60 days of 2023, but as of mid-February, there's been 80 mass shootings. You've heard from Beth and Miguelaille. It is an issue that requires all of us to rally behind. Do you wonder if those legislators who want to pass the open carry gun laws, had they lost a loved one, do you think they would feel differently? I don't know, but for certain, we know that everyone deserves to be safe. And it starts with the kinds of laws we legislate, as well as our efforts to ensure the safety of our families and our community with much more safer gun laws. So with that, I want to say thank you for tuning in this evening, and we wish you a wonderful Saturday night. Good night.